Right, hello everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to be here today. The last time I spoke to you was at one of your virtual conferences during the lockdowns, but it's lovely to be here and see you all in person. I've called this talk an update, but I'll spend a bit of the time just refreshing you and telling you what StatsCloud is for those who aren't aware of it or those who have forgotten. And then I'll start talking about some of the new features we've added in this year. So StatsCloud, as you may have guessed, is a statistics package that lives in the cloud. Now, up until fairly recently, we were in beta, but I'm happy to say at the start of this year, we came out of beta. So we have quite a mature and stable product now. And it's a product that's being used by universities across the world and in different capacities. Some universities are looking to use StatsCloud to completely replace their previous statistics packages. Others are just supplementing their teaching with StatsCloud, using it for some tasks, but haven't yet migrated fully over. So, like I said, I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about, I'm going to go right back to the start and say, why did we create StatsCloud? The elephant in the room is that there's a lot of statistics packages out there already. We've got SPSS, SAS, MATLAB, there's some open source alternatives to those. And some universities have bypassed the point and click display completely and teach students a programming language. So there's a lot of options available, but my feeling was that although there's still quite a lot, they don't do what I would expect a statistics package, a modern statistics package to do. So here's my basic checklist of things I would expect a modern statistics package to do. First of all, it should be installable and run on all devices. I think stats lecturers have a bit of a nightmare of a time at the start of the year when students show up with Chromebooks, tablets, and certain devices that have processors that won't run certain programming languages. And it'd be nice if you could just say to students, here's the app, you install it, and you can be guaranteed that it runs on any device. Wouldn't that be nice? Related to that, it should be touch-friendly and accessible on all devices. So we can't escape the fact that students like using touch devices, tablets and phones. And in my view, a statistics package should be designed for those devices, as well as it is for desktops. And it's not enough that it should just work on a phone or a tablet. It should be designed for it. It should have a responsive design, a bit like we can see here. So the interface changes according to the device you're using. So there's none of this awkward pinching into Zoom and trying to tap on tiny buttons. Be designed with students in mind. There's an issue in stats software where statistics software is developed by professional statisticians for professional statisticians. And students, undergraduate students of psychology, are not professional statisticians. And it seems that they open this software and they get very, very overwhelmed by all the options. And there's a lot of things in there that they don't understand. So our focus with StatsCloud was to strip out all the complicated stuff and make it simple and digestible for students. When we talk about the cloud, we have to consider data privacy and GDPR guidelines as well. So when you send stuff to the cloud, you need to make absolutely sure you know what's being sent, where it's being sent to, how long it's stored for, and that you have the option to remove it if you need to. So all of those things are really important. But the most important thing of all is that stats software should be free and always available. We've got the technology now to offer that. So there's no excuse really for not providing a statistics package, a version of a statistics package that's free and can work for everyone on any device at any time. So the idea with StatsCloud is that we wanted to make a package that meets all of that criteria. And I'm happy to say it does. So here's a little bit more about how we're meeting that criteria. First of all, StatsCloud is a progressive web app. I'm sure many of you know what a progressive web app is. But to summarize, it's a web app that you can install and run offline on any device. And really, it has the advantages of both a native app and a web app. So it works offline, it updates automatically, it can be installed on any device, and it will just work. Now, to show you how easy it is to install StatsCloud, here's a screenshot of the opening page. This was on my computer. So to do it, you can see there's an install button in the top right corner. So to install it, all you do is click that button, and then the install dialog will pop up. There's a couple of screenshots you can browse through if you want to. It tells you a little bit about the app. And then when you're ready, you just click install, and it's installed. That's it. That's how you install StatsCloud. And you can see it behaves exactly like a native app. It's on your desktop. When you search your apps, it appears in the software list. You can pin it to the start bar. It shows up in search results. It functions exactly like a native app, and you install it with that single click. There's another neat features as well. So for instance, here's StatsCloud running. If you right click, you get these jump menus. So you can jump straight into a new project, dashboard, documentation. And yeah, that just shows you that it integrates very, very nicely into the Windows shell. It works similarly for on Macs as well. Here it is on my phone. So again, we've got the install button in the top corner. To install on a mobile, all you do is click that, get the same little dialog box, click install. You can see it's installing, and then it will tell us that the app is installed. Once it's installed, you can see it will appear as an icon in your apps. If you long press it, you'll get the same jump menu that we saw on the desktop version. So you can skip to a new project. Otherwise, you can just tap it and it opens up the app on the phone. So that gives you an idea of how easy it is to get students started with StatsCloud. Now we want to make it touch-friendly and accessible on all devices. This is the desktop interface. And I'll be honest, we're quite happy with this. I think this looks quite nice. It's sleek, it's modern. It's the kind of thing that students will appreciate. That is the desktop version. We also have it appearing for tablets. So you can see the tablet version, the data toolbar just gets a little bit stripped down. It's we make some of the buttons a bit bigger, just so it's a bit more user-friendly on tablets. And here it is in portrait and landscape mode on different tabs. And this is what it looks like on phones. So we spent quite a lot of time this year revamping the interface and making sure it works really well on mobile phones. So we can see we've got one project here at different stages. We've got the data, we've got the variables, charts, and a code tab as well. You can do absolutely everything through a phone that you can do on the desktop version. So it's not a stripped down version. We've just been quite careful about how we organize buttons to make sure it has exactly the same accessibility as the desktop version. Okay, let's spend a bit of time now talking about the philosophy behind making StatsCloud. Now, I have a little bit of an issue with what I call the tick box interface in statistics software that we largely see in SPSS. And this is when you say you're a student and you've just learned what a t-test is. So you open up your stats software and you say, I want to do a t-test. You think you know what you're doing at that point. And then suddenly your stats software says, but what type of t-test do you want to do? Do you want to do a non-parametric equivalent? Do you want to do some assumption tests? What type of assumption tests? Do you want to do an effect size? What type of effect sizes? What kind of power calculation? And students see all this information all at the same time, and they don't always understand everything that's presented to them, and they get a bit overwhelmed by it. In actual fact, when you present that to students, this is what they see. And there seems to be this disconnect between input and output. So statistics software generally asks you for an input, and you tick these boxes, and then you've got the output, which you can't interact with in any way. So we thought there's a better way of doing this. So here's how you run an analysis in StatsCloud. You click the analysis tab. We're going to run a new analysis. And we know this is a t-test, so we've sectioned this under differences. There's the t-test. Now, the only input we need is what your grouping variable is and what the measured variable is. Then we run the analysis, and everything gets summarized in this interactive input. You can interact with every part here. So we've got the highlights, we've got charts that you can expand. And as you scroll down, we've got the classic test results that you'd get from SPSS. The nice thing about this is when you click on them, it shows you the formula it used to calculate them, which is really useful for teaching resources. Underneath, you'll see there's this reliability, and StatsCloud automatically runs assumption tests for us, the appropriate assumption test. And you can click on each one to get a little bit more of a summary of what was done in that test and whether it was passed or not. A text summary that summarizes everything in plain English, and a bit of code as well, if you're interested in teaching your students how to code. You can also toggle the test at the top, and if you pick a test that isn't suitable, StatsCloud tells you in plain English that a better test is available. So it's really there to make the whole process much easier, much more digestible for students. We want students to have a relationship with the app. We don't just want it to be input-output. We want them to understand exactly what it is they're doing and what the data shows when it's presented to them. So another way students can interact with the app is by manually checking these assumptions themselves. Now, on the previous slide, I showed you that StatsCloud tests these assumptions for you automatically, but it is possible to ask it not to do that and ask the users to check the assumptions themselves. So here's an example of, I think this is a regression analysis. So if we click on, say, linearity, it opens up this pop-up. It gives an explanation of what the test requires. It gives a plot, and it asks the user to make a decision themselves based on what they can see, whether they think that assumption has been met. And that's a nice way of getting students to understand exactly why they need to do these assumption tests and understand the value they have. So I've got a survey here. This is a quick video I've got for a principal component analysis on a house buying survey. This is all fake data, by the way, not least because no one can afford to buy a house now. But as we scroll down now, you can see this is me working my way through the assumptions. So I'm going to click on test design, and this test requires at least 3 outcomes and ratio data. So yes. Sampling adequacy. Now, this ideally needs a value above 0.7. 0.5 is okay, but because it's not over 0.7, we're going to say unclear. And then we'll just work our way through the rest of these assumptions. Now, these assumptions take different forms. Some ask you to check a single value. Others ask you to check a list of values like this and check they all look good. They all meet a criteria. But regardless, you can see that once you've worked your way through these assumptions, you can use this traffic light system to see whether there are any issues, and that's represented in the top as well. Okay, so that's how we've tried to make the app more usable and accessible for students. And the feedback we've had from students has been remarkably positive. Students really prefer this way of running statistics. Okay, let's talk a bit about data privacy then, because StatsCloud, as you may have guessed, uses the cloud. And it's really important to make sure that any data you send to the cloud is handled appropriately and it's stored appropriately, and you don't need to worry about people getting your data. That's not an issue for StatsCloud, simply because by default, all users' data stays on their device. And you're probably thinking, what? This is a cloud-based package. How does that happen? What you may imagine happens is that you have your device, whether it's your phone, your laptop, and when you want to run an analysis like a t-test, you send your data to the cloud then does the analysis and sends the results back to your device. Now, StatsCloud actually works in reverse. What actually happens is when you've got the data on your device and you want to run, say, a t-test, the app downloads the code you need to run that test from the cloud onto your device, and then your device does the analysis. So it's only getting data from the cloud. It's not sending data to the cloud. And that is really our secret weapon, because that allows us to do a lot of things. So I mentioned that StatsCloud can work offline. When you install it, as I demonstrated earlier on, what you're doing is you're downloading all of those assets onto your device. So all the code you need to run charts, analysis, to generate the code, everything you need to run the app gets downloaded onto your device when you install it. And once it's there, the whole app functions offline. So you don't need to worry. If some of your students have patchy internet connections, then you don't need to worry. But the chief reason you shouldn't need to worry is because your data never leaves your device. Unless, of course, you're a pro user. Now, I think I talked about pro users last time I was here. Core users are users that use the app for free. And pro users have this extra optional ability where they can save their projects to the cloud. Not just their projects, they can also share a library of variables as well. So if, for instance, you find yourself using the same questionnaire over and over again in studies, what you can do is you can save that questionnaire to your own personal library and then pull it down from the cloud whenever you want to use it. And user preferences as well, the language you're using, the light or dark mode, what menus you've got open, things like that. All that stuff can be backed up in the cloud. But we stress that that's only when you're aware of it. By default, everything stays on your device. So pro users' data gets saved to the cloud, but where? This is something I'm going to talk about a bit later. We are currently offering the option for universities to self-host StatsCloud. So you have the option to host your own instance of StatsCloud at your university. And that means all the data from your staff, from your students, is stored on premises. It never leaves your server. On the topic of security as well, obviously pro users need to have logins. And for logins, we're currently using OAuth, that login through Microsoft, through Google. And because of that, we never need to store any passwords because users are authenticated by an external tool like Microsoft. So in summary, StatsCloud is very, very secure. And the last thing I want to say is that it's free and always available, and it always will be. Because of the technique we're using, because our servers aren't constantly battered with requests to run complicated analysis, they're free to serve lots and lots of users. So the servers have low demand, which is good for us, and it's good for you if you choose to run an instance of StatsCloud, and it has huge capacity. One single instance of StatsCloud can serve many thousands of users. So you never need to worry about people getting kicked off. We don't restrict the kind of analysis you can do. We don't kick you off after a certain time. We don't have any idle limits. It's free and it's always available for everyone at any time. Okay, so here are the new features we've added in 2023. Saving a project, this is a big one. So by default, when you open StatsCloud, you have a temporary project and that project disappears when you close the app. Now, I know for a lot of people that's less than ideal because you don't want to lose your project, you want to keep it there. So previously, it was only pro users who were able to keep a project saved that they could return to later. But we've added in the option to save a project. So it's now possible to keep one project saved on your device. So when you've got your saved project open in StatsCloud, it automatically syncs to your device. You don't need to manually tell it to do any of that. It does that for you automatically. And you will see that sign in the top corner. So you can see there, when you click this green button, it'll give you the option to save the project to the device. I was logged in as a core user when I did this, so that's grayed out. But you can save the project to the device. And when you do, it just alerts you that everything you're doing is saved to your device. Now, the project is only available on the device it was created on, so because it's not cloud saved, you can't return to it on a phone. It's just saved on that device. But you can return to it from any time from the home screen. Speaking of the home screen, we have a home screen. This is a new thing we've added. So when you open the app for the first time, you get greeted with this lovely homepage, welcome page, and it gives you these options to create a temporary project, which is what you could do previously. A new saved project, and it tells you what it does. And again, we're taking the opportunity there to remind you that no data is being sent to the cloud if you're creating either of these. Now, if you're a pro user, you have the option for a new cloud project and your data is synced to the cloud. Now you can see here, I did have a project saved to this device previously. It was messing around with the Fisher Iris dataset. And so to go there, I just click on the project and I'm back where I left off. So that's a really useful feature. You can open full projects from a URL as well. So with StatsCloud, we use URL parameters as a sort of set of instructions. So when you give a link to StatsCloud, you can add some details afterwards with some instructions. So StatsCloud will load up with data preloaded. You don't need to understand what any of this does. If you click the share button in StatsCloud, it will generate these links for you automatically. What it does is it creates a snapshot of the app at that given time. So if you want to show someone what you're currently working on, click the share button, get the link, and then you can share that with other people. And those things are quite useful. You can post them in emails, you can post them on your virtual learning environment, anywhere where people can access it and click on things. There is one thing better than a URL though. and that is a QR code. This is something else you can do. Anything you can turn into a link, you can turn into a QR code. And I'll actually invite you now, if you'd like to scan this with your phones. And you should find that when you scan that QR code, it will open up a StatsCloud project with the Fisher Iris dataset already loaded. And if you click on the charts tab, you'll see there should be a chart already created. Now, this opens up some really exciting possibilities because you can imagine doing this in a stats lecture. You can imagine the stats lecturer saying, right, students, everyone scan this QR code, everyone can see the data, they can play around with it. You can ask them questions, say, well, what happens when we do this with the data? Can anyone notice anything strange about the data? You can also put them on posters. If your students are presenting posters, they could have a nice little QR code down at the bottom. Look at my data. They could look at the poster, scan the QR code, and have the data on their phone as they're talking to the person. Or perhaps as a researcher, that might be useful for you as a researcher as well. And like links, you can get the code, you can get the QR code from the share button down there. So when you click on the share button, it opens up this pop-up, and you can see you can get the URL, you can get the QR code, and you can also embed the app as well. So you could, if you imagine you've got on your virtual learning environment, say, you've got a bit of HTML and you're writing a message to students, you can say, follow this link to open StatsCloud. One thing better you can do is actually embed the app in your HTML page. So here is StatsCloud embedded as an iframe. Now that's not an image, that's the actual app. So this is a bit of HTML I've written. You can imagine this is just the form of a web page. And I've written some text and I've said, take a look at the StatsCloud project below so they can interact with this as if it's the real app. Now, I mentioned earlier that StatsCloud has a responsive design. So as you resize the window, the app will change in appearance to make sure everything fits nicely on the screen. So these are really useful. You can drop these in your virtual learning environments, put them on GitHub pages, online blogs, websites, anything that accepts HTML markup. We give you the code for the iframe that you can paste into your HTML page. If you don't want the full app, we will soon be offering widgets. So a widget is a small version of the app, which is fully customizable. So you can see, here's an example URL of a widget, which StatsCloud will generate for you. So you can see here, it just says, get the science and survey data, add these tabs, and select the data tab. And that's exactly what we see here. Now, again, this can be embedded into teaching materials, into blogs, online resources, whatever it is that you use to access students. And there's also the option to open the app fully if they want to get the full experience. But that's a really nice way. If you want to communicate something about data, maybe you're doing histograms or distributions, and you want to show to students how playing with the data can affect the shape of a graph, this is a really nice way of doing it. Now, this leads me on to the feature that I'm most excited about, which is dashboard view. Now, you can see from the screenshots I've shown already that StatsCloud has different tabs. We have a data tab, a variables tab, a filters tab, a charts tab. And what you may find yourself doing is flicking between these tabs. You might flick between the data and the variables, data, charts, data analysis. It's not a big problem, but it's not the most efficient way of working. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if you could get everything, your entire project, on the screen all at the same time in sort of like a studio view? Well, that's exactly what we've done with this. This is our dashboard view, and this will be coming soon. Now, I should be modest about this, but I'll be honest, I'm really proud of this. I love this. This completely transforms the way you use a statistics app because everything here is right at your fingertips. This is all dynamic. So changing the data will affect your charts, it will affect analyses, it will affect the code as well. Everything is completely dynamic and it's fully customizable as well. So for instance, here I am, let's say we want to remove that block. We can remove it. Let's say we want it with the charts, we can add it to the charts block. And we want to get rid of the charts, we want to move the charts up here. Nice. We can also change the theme as well, make it look a bit different. So you don't have to have that rainbow type background. We've got lots of backgrounds you can choose from. This one. Look at that. I think students will have fun with this. And of course, StatsCloud isn't available in dark mode as well. So there it is, looking in dark mode. Always makes me smile when I see that. I'm really, really pleased with that. Now, it's not just visually nice. It provides a really nice way of teaching in ways that you couldn't before. Now, I know a lot of universities would like to teach students how to code. And if you have any experience teaching students to code, you'll know it's a nightmare because programming languages are very, very difficult to teach students who have never come across them before. But because this is all dynamic, because this all changes as you're using it, you can actually see how teaching a programming language is really simple. So for instance, let's say if you start typing in numbers, it gives you the code. You can see all these numbers, the numbers get populated as you add them there. Let's add a new variable. This time we'll add in some strings. And it creates that. Not only that, it puts it in a data frame and it gives the code to print that to the console as well. So this is a really nice way of teaching students, getting them started really quickly with the programming language. Variables as well, we can change the name. And you see this all gets changed as we do this. And something else we can do, we can hide the gender variables. When we do that, the code changes. It opens the dplyr library and hides it with this tool. So it's very, very transparent about everything it does. It's also available in Julia. Exactly the same happens in Julia and in Python as well. The nice thing about Python, of course, is we have a Python terminal built into the app. So what you do that is you code and Python will print the data. It follows the instructions that you've got there. So that's a really, really quick and easy way to get students used to learning a programming language. Again, that's something I'm quite pleased with. The last feature I want to talk about is custom analyses. So with StatsCloud, to be honest, we're pretty shameless about the fact that StatsCloud probably won't do every single analysis you want it to do. It could do quite a lot, but there's a limit to what we can put in the app. And to be honest, we want to give you the flexibility to extend it as you want to. And that's why we're introducing custom analyses. So what you can do with this new feature is you can write your own raw code for an analysis. So you can see here, I've written the code in Python for running a t-test. So I've broken it down step by step, and I've got the t-statistic down at the bottom there. I must admit, I haven't checked that code, so there might be a typo in there. I think it's okay. But once you've got that code, you can do things with it. You can save your code to your own library. And once you've saved it to a library, you can then come back to it in future projects. You can share this with other people. So you've written a code that you'd like to use or you'd like other students to use. You can share that with a link, and then they can follow that link and add it to their variables. Ideally, in the future, it'd be nice to work towards a global repository when people all across the world can write their own custom analyses in StatsCloud, and we can put them in a repository and you can download the ones you want. I mentioned as well that you can install an instance of StatsCloud at your institution. And one thing we will allow you to do is allow your instance of StatsCloud to come preloaded with any custom analyses you write. So speaking of that, I'd like to talk now a bit about running StatsCloud at university. So in summary, these are the versions of StatsCloud we have available. StatsCloud.app, this is the instance, the official instance running at StatsCloud.app. Of course, you're very welcome to use that. It's all completely free, but it does come with these limitations. It's not available to customize, and you're stuck with our data sets. So we have the basic version and the full version. I won't go through each of these, but if you glance over, you'll see you can do a lot more with the full version. You can add your pro admin users, open SPSS files. Yeah, there's lots of very good stuff you can do with this. Here's an example. If you're using the full version, it's very easy to edit the customization just through this interface here. So it's just a case of clicking buttons. I talked a bit earlier about how StatsCloud can test assumptions of tests automatically for you. That's a feature you can turn off. If you don't want your students to have that feature, you can stop it doing that by default, or you can disable the feature altogether. There are lots of other options. This is actually quite an old screenshot. You can customize what tabs appear. There's lots of things you can do to make your instance of the app look exactly the way you want it to. Adding users as well. You can see when you're logged in as an admin, you get a few extra tools here. You can add and edit users. We've got a feature where you can upload a CSV file of your users and email addresses all in one go, so you don't have to enter them individually. And you can impersonate users as well. If you are an admin, you can type the name of a student and then browse and use the app as if you are that student. If you would like to diagnose an issue a student is having, mark a student's project. Some people use it for that, and make sure that everything appears on their dashboard as you expect it would. So please get in touch. We'd love to have a dialogue with you about how you might be able to use StatsCloud at your university. We'd love to talk to you individually, stats lecturers, program leaders. It'd be lovely to hear how you're teaching statistics currently and how StatsCloud would fit in with the way you're currently teaching statistics. I'm also very happy to do demonstrations, either in person or online. And if you'd like to see what it's like to be a pro user, I can set you up with a pro account on the official instance, so you can get a feel for what it's like to cloud save projects. Other than that, please give us your feedback and send us your feature requests. We want to make sure the app does everything you want it to, because it's designed for you. It's designed as a teaching tool for you. So that's all I'll say. Thank you very much for listening.